Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you are well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more relationship stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting a like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too. I can't help but laugh at myself because I say it every time and I can just picture you guys going, oh, not again. Anyway, let's crack on with today's first story, which comes from a throwaway account and it's titled, "My husband, male 35, thinks I, female 32, baby trapped him despite the baby being planned. Please help." My husband, male 35, and I, female 32, have been married for 7 years. He lived next door and we just clicked. It was like a fairy tale. One thing I've always thought made our marriage so strong was our friendship with each other and our trust in one another. Although now my husband seems to think otherwise. Recently, my husband found out that his friend, Jeff, male 34, had been baby trapped. Basically, Jeff's wife, female 32, stopped taking the pill and fell pregnant a few months into their relationship and only came clean after the wedding. Jeff came from a very conservative family, which his wife knew, and so he felt obligated to marry her after the pregnancy. Unfortunately, he also now feels obligated to stay regardless of the clearly messed up dynamic because he feels that he made a vow and will stick by his wife and child. My husband, for some reason, has been really rattled by this. I'm currently 4 months pregnant with our first, and my husband asked me yesterday if I was trying to baby trap him. I first laughed because honestly I thought it was a joke. He was dead serious and doubled down, so I told him that we have already been married for 7 years and a baby was not going to trap him any more than he already is. My husband did not like that answer and said that there was no time limit on baby trapping, and that my intentions were clearly not pure given how I was acting as if his concerns were a joke. He said he trusted me in the past, but me laughing in his face gave him no reason to trust me now. I did not really know what he wanted or how I was meant to respond, and I said we should talk about this in the morning. Today I woke up and my husband was gone. But I did have a nasty text from his brother, male 28, saying that I had forced my husband into this pregnancy, despite it having been a joint decision. My husband is MIA and not responding to calls or texts, and I'm now wondering on how on earth to go forward. Any advice is appreciated. And people in the comments were speculating what may have made him start going down this road. So Snappy says, sounds like this friend was talking into your husband's ear. Like it happened to him, it has to be happening to your husband too. Every chemistry replies to that and says, misery loves company. His friend would hate to have a friend who is actually happy in their relationship and a planned pregnancy to the point he is trying to make OP's husband believe he's in the same situation. Harris says he's terrified and possibly regretful about becoming a father, but it was filling him with too much guilt to say or do anything about it. Then he heard his friend's story of woe and it was like a eureka. Suddenly he had located a very convenient target outside of himself for him to aim all his feelings of guilt and regret at, you, which allowed him to convince himself he was actually somehow righteous in fleeing. Except this all bullcrap, complete and utter crap. You didn't trap him. He's just a massive terrified coward who chose to invent a way to villainize his pregnant wife so he wouldn't feel so guilty about abandoning her. So step one for you is to stop feeling like you have to convince him of your innocence. That your role in this is somehow to apologize to him or coddle him, or do anything that indicates you accept this bullcrap attempt to make you into the bad guy here. You are not, that's him. Step 2 would involve, if it were me anyhow, getting really peed off that he did this. Like spitting mad furious. Like channeling Samuel Jackson and wondering who the hell this mother effer thinks he is, lobbing ugly accusations at you to try and blame you for his cowardice. Steps 3 and 4 are talking to an attorney and a therapist. Maybe he'll come back sobbing, and we'll spend weeks or months groveling at your feet for forgiveness for his ugly, cowardly BS. Or maybe he doubles down on his bullcrap, and you won't ever see or hear from him again outside of court, where he sues you for divorce or the marital assets, and then he tries to take full custody of your baby for spite. I don't know. But either way, it's much better to be prepared, armed with competent legal and mental health advice, so you can protect yourself and your child. Step 5 is to find your support system and rely on them. Family, friends, whoever and wherever they may be. You've just discovered that your husband is, in fact, a terrible person. He's the type to abandon his pregnant wife and cook up a BD reason to blame her for it. He's not all the man you thought he was. So in addition to being effing furious, I'd be really hurt and upset. I feel lied to and heartbreakingly betrayed. Feel your feelings and reach out to your support system. You don't have to keep this a secret or shy away from help out of some misplaced sense of embarrassment. Ask for help and support. Bonkers Conker says, I had a similar situation with my partner of 6 years. Now we have an 8-month-old who was 100% planned and wanted by both of us. At the start of my pregnancy, he was super excited and supportive, but by my 3rd trimester, he switched. He started acting weird, being distant, didn't care about coming to scans, wouldn't engage with any planning or buying stuff. Then he started going out a lot and staying out all night while still saying nothing was wrong. It all came to a head and he eventually told me he was no longer sure about having a baby and that he felt I forced him into it. I think it's pretty common for guys to have doubts, especially with a first child. It's a huge change in responsibility and he may just be expressing that in an unhelpful and cruel way. But you can acknowledge that and still be firm that it was a joint decision, and it's not fair in any way to blame you because he's feeling anxious about having a baby. If he can't put his feelings aside and see how hurtful it is to accuse you of that, he's not being a good husband. Once we got to the root of the problem, my partner did understand and things got better. I'm still upset that he was so unsupportive during most of my 3rd trimester, and while I have forgiven him, it still wasn't fair. He completely changed this June once our daughter was born and is a great father. It's just something we had to work through. So OP updates their post the next day and says, not sure if I'm allowed to post on here again, but I wanted to quickly update everyone who was kind enough to give me some advice. I didn't respond to anyone because my post was locked quite quickly, but I have read every single comment and message and I'm very grateful. I realized while I was reading the comments that everyone was right. I wasn't angry enough. My husband had insulted me and our marriage in a very hurtful way, and it just didn't really register for a while. I was so confused and upset that it didn't occur to me to be angry, but I think everything just needed to sink in. In the meantime, I called my best friend, female 31, who's been such a rock in my life. She came over with some chocolate and was furious when she heard. She called her husband, male 34, to the house after I'd gotten everything out of my system. He's a family lawyer, and he said that he would happily represent me if I wanted to go through with a divorce. This man is a saint and will draw up divorce papers on Monday. My mother-in-law, female 66, showed up with my husband in the car not long after my best friend's husband arrived, and she practically dragged him to the door. My mother-in-law said that he had showed up at theirs late last night, saying that he was certain I was using the baby to trap him. Fortunately, my mother-in-law is a smart woman and absolutely tore him a new one before dragging him to the house today to apologize. My worm of a husband did not look me in the eye the entire time, but said that he was scared about becoming a dad and projected his fears onto me. He said he wasn't sure if he was ready for that kind of commitment, but he will step up, as if he is some kind of hero. Eye roll. I called him a coward and told him that he should stay with his parents until I'm ready to talk to him. I didn't want to say anything about the divorce papers because I didn't know what his reaction would be, but he will find out soon enough. I also showed my mother-in-law the text from my brother-in-law and her face was like a storm cloud. I don't know what will happen there, but I'm sure it will be bad. For now, I am exhausted and just want to curl up and cry. My best friend has said she'll spend the night with me and we can watch silly movies. I've also made an appointment with a therapist for next week, but for now, I just need to rest. I'm exhausted and devastated that my marriage has come crumbling down. Sorry for the sad ending, everyone. Then OP updates again 9 days later and says thank you to everyone for all the messages and kind pieces of advice. I've received so many requests for an update, so I thought I would quickly post and let you know how I'm doing. Overall, everything has settled a little bit. In good news, I had a scan with the doctor. My mother-in-law attended with me, and the baby is happy and healthy. I found out the gender. I'm having a little girl. I'm over the moon. My mother-in-law was a gem and was so touched that I included her in the scan. She is very excited to be a granny. On that note, my mother-in-law organized a family lunch a couple of days after the scan. I was a little reluctant, but I knew she had good intentions and wouldn't do anything to make matters worse. When I arrived, my husband and brother-in-law were there, along with my father-in-law, male 70, and mother-in-law. It was quite awkward until my mother-in-law asked if anyone had to say anything. My brother-in-law spoke first and apologized for his awful text, saying that he was swept up in the moment and wanted to support his brother. I explained how hurtful it had been to receive such a nasty and vindictive message, and that he knew as well as anyone that my husband and I had been trying for almost a year. He hung his head and mumbled something. That was pretty much the last I heard out of him for the afternoon. Next, my mother-in-law looked quite pointedly at my husband, but he actively avoided anyone's eyes. Eventually, she spoke up and announced that my husband would no longer be welcome to stay in their house. She said that she was ashamed to have her son behave the way that he has, and that she would prefer to make space for her granddaughter rather than have some lowlife hanging around. My husband had opened his mouth to say something earlier, but his eyes lit up when she said granddaughter. My husband had always wanted a girl, and he was suddenly in tears, saying that he was so pleased to hear the gender. My husband was suddenly wanting to touch my belly and asked if he could come home and paint the nursery. I told him in no uncertain terms that he was not welcome and that he had destroyed any trust I had in him. I told him that if I took him back, I'd be worried that he would disappear at any kind of big news and that I couldn't have someone at my side who balked at the first chance. He asked me if I was telling him it was over, and I point blank told him that I had engaged a lawyer. My husband was kind of frantic, but I felt so calm, like someone had put a blanket over me in the situation. Normally, I'm a big crier, but I felt so removed from everything. My husband said that this was not fair. It's shown a little bit of panic, and suddenly I'm throwing away our life and denying him his daughter. My father-in-law reminded him that this is the same baby he felt trapped by no more than 2 weeks ago. My husband said it was a mistake and he was stressed, but my mother-in-law asked him how he thought I felt. She asked him to imagine being so vulnerable and giving up your body to grow a family, and suddenly the one person you trust is accusing you of terrible things. He said it was a mistake and he projected his fears onto me. I told my husband that I felt so broken when he left me, and I had all these dreams of a beautiful family which came crashing down in an instant. My husband said that he wanted those things with me and he wanted our baby girl, but that he let the panic overwhelm him. I told him that wasn't a good enough excuse for what he put me through, and that he certainly didn't seem panicked when his mum had to drag him to my door to apologize. He didn't have much of an answer other than to say that he was ready now and wanted our girl. In all of this, in all the times he told me he wanted me and our baby, he never once apologized properly. After a very, very long discussion, the lunch wrapped up and my mother-in-law stood by what she had said about my husband not being welcome. He asked again if he could come home with me. I told him that it was my house. I owned the house before we married, and it was going to be a safe space for me. That is to say, he is not welcome. As far as I know, he's staying at some hotel. He was served divorce papers at work on Friday. My bestie's husband drafted them earlier, but I wanted to wait until I had thought it all through. I received a few missed calls and crying voicemails asking if I was really throwing away our family, but I did not respond. He even took a crying selfie sitting in his car, which my bestie laughed at quite a bit. My mother-in-law called me when she heard and told me that I am making the right decision. She said she never wanted my marriage to end this way or for our sons to be so callous, but she is here for my baby and I, and that we will always be family. She even tried to apologize on my husband's behalf, but I told her that was not necessary. At the end of the day, his actions are his to own. My best friend has been around all weekend and we went baby clothes shopping for a little bit of sunshine in all this. She's been such a rock and her husband has helped so much with the process. I don't know what will happen next, but I feel much calmer and like I'm making the right decision. I will update again if anything major or exciting happens, but for now, I just want to get through all of this and hopefully come out with a beautiful baby girl. Wish us luck. And absolutely, I wish you all the luck going forward. And I don't know what it is about this story. I was getting to tears towards the end. I was getting quite emotional about it. I think it was because the mother-in-law, which, you know, we cover a lot of mother-in-law stories and most of the time they're a bloody nightmare in the story. So to see this one backing you up and taking control of situations like that, it was overwhelming. It sounds like OP does have a wonderful support system going forward, and like the comment said in the first part, I really hope that she does continue to lean on them when she can and get that help when she needs it. But now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, And let's move on to another story. And our next story comes from Inevitable Trip 3538 and says, "Am I the a-hole for not cancelling my plans after my boyfriend learned about his diagnosis? I, 25 female, work in event planning, so I always get invites or tickets to go to high-end events. There was a huge event coming up that I was really excited to go to. I asked my boyfriend, 27, 3 days before the event to accompany me, and he said yes. So originally, the plan was my boyfriend, my stepsister, and myself. On the day of the event, he said he had a doctor's appointment, so he isn't sure if he can still attend. I said no problem, and I waited for him to return home. A couple of hours later, he texted me and said he has something to tell me. I got worried and called him immediately. I asked if everything was okay, and he said he was diagnosed with anemia, so he'll have to take supplements. I expressed how sorry I was and spoke to him for about 2 hours, gave him pep talks, told him I'm here if he needs me, reassured him that I will always love him, etc. I then asked if he would still like to attend the event with me to take his mind off things, to which he responded that he doesn't like the artist performing, so he'd rather go to another event. I said no problem, I would go with my stepsister alone. He got upset and hung up. I called him back, but he started an argument about how I'm selfish for going out while he's going through something. I told him that I already made plans with my stepsister and I can't back out now as she's depending on me. I also don't drink, so I would have been the sober driver, and if I didn't go, she couldn't. I told him that this event is the only event my sister really wanted to attend, and I promised her that I would take her months prior. I even told him I'll see him the next day, and he said be safe and hung up. I got to the event around 11 and spent the entire event alone, just sitting down and watching the show by myself, having food and drinks. When I returned home around 2 AM, I called him and he was awake playing video games. His first words were, "Look who cares about me again." I said I'm too tired for this, and he responded by saying that of course I'm tired. I went out without him knowing he's upset, but I love partying and meeting new people, so much that I didn't think to stay with him on the phone. I told him he's being ridiculous, and I would have stayed if it were just us who had planned to go. He said my priorities are off and I'm an ignorant a-hole. Keep in mind, I don't attend parties unless it's with my family, and I only attend events a few times a year. So, am I the a-hole for not staying on the phone with him and attending the event instead? And we're going to start in the comments with Material Prophet, who says, "When I saw the title, I expected it to be cancer, some kind of degenerative disorder or something requiring major surgery. Anemia is generally a completely treatable condition that has no impact on quality of life, and unless the doctor referenced a concern about a more serious condition, it's reasonable to assume that supplements are all that is needed at this point. It sounds like more he's using it as an excuse to get out of something he didn't want to do, then taking it a step further to try and manipulate you. Not the a-hole." Username Taken says, "When my doctor told me to take iron pills and vitamins, I was like, okay. And I told my husband and he was like, okay. And then I got some iron pills and vitamins and took them and everyone was okay." Memento Mori replies to that and says, "I feel like there should have been a lot more dramatics." Which Juicy Fruit replies and says, "As I lay in my sickbed, hand clutched to my racing heart, my chiseled doctor consoled me as he prepared for the transfusion. As I braced myself for the sting of penetration, the door burst open and my boyfriend collapsed to his knees. 'My darling,' he cried, ripping at his 3-piece Armani suit. 'Is it true? Why, if I only could provide my own lifeblood for your fortitude, let it run through your veins and return life to your pallid visage. I'd rip my own beating heart from my brawny chest, all for your own vitality.' My hand reached for his, but before we could make contact, I realized no one gives a shit." CVKME says, "Not the a-hole. Anemia is so common. I put it in quotations because there are so many different types of anemia. Supplements, he's probably iron deficient and needs to take vitamins. The 2-hour pep talk you had to give him about to take supplements is embarrassing for him. He basically threw a huge pity party and that continued until you called him later. I would take this as an opportunity to examine his emotional maturity and how he treats you. It sounds to me like he can easily make you feel bad and guilty about things you shouldn't feel bad nor guilty about. And he took up 2 hours of your time earlier on the phone because the doctor told him to take vitamins. He sounds like he's immature and craves your attention, and he doesn't care about your happiness." And Careful Comparison says absolutely not the a-hole. This would be a huge red flag to me. Is he normally on the controlling side? To which OP replies saying, that's the thing. Everyone around me says that he's controlling, but I don't see it 100%, or I don't know if that's what I call it. He doesn't outrightly come out and say don't do that, but he'll start an argument each and every time I have to go somewhere. For example, the event I went to before this one was last year October and he went with me. I went to the bathroom about 5 minutes away from our seats, and when I came back he asked, did any guy say you looked sexy when you went to the bathroom? I said no, and he said I don't believe you, and was mad for the rest of the night. Not sure if that falls under controlling or crazy. So now I'm going to turn this one to you guys. What do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And just a huge thank you from the bottom of my heart for getting involved in today's stories. Your love, your support, your time always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so much for being involved, and hopefully I will see you in the next one. Take care and much love.